Well, I was about a few seconds away from deleting every discovery I made over the last 30 years because I just didn't feel worthy. I wasn't to where I needed to be, and I almost destroyed everything. And what happened next changed everything.
Okay, well, that's a good opening. Welcome, folks. My name is Doug Crow with Authority Fusion. I got on the live stream today my good friend and one of my mentors, Dr. Phil Agrios. He's got a story to tell that's going to, hopefully inspire you, but more importantly, give you some really actionable things you can do to do what we all want to do, which is improve our lives. So before we get to this seminal moment, Phil, give us a little background on yourself and how you got started.
Yeah, I used to be used to practice as a chiropractor and a functional medicine practitioner. My specialty was thyroid and autoimmune diseases, and I was in practice for 35 years. And during those times, I mean, even though I was helping thousands of people and helping them all, and life wasn't always roses, right? It was always some struggle and trying to figure out what was going on. Things would go into a good range for me, and then I would lose it, and it would be like this roller coaster. I used to be called the roller coaster when I was in college because I had these kind of mood swings about these things, and I really didn't know what the heck all that was about. And during the process, I was able to really to come up with, a trait that changed everything for me. A lot of people think that mindset is the reason behind self-sabotage. What would you really think if I told you it was actually a biological trait that we're born with, and that you can turn it off instantly at your command?
Kind of feels like I'm off the hook. Like, hey, if it's not my cognitive abilities, if I'm born with it, it kind of relieves me of the responsibility. But it sounds like there's more to it than that. So,
yeah, because what's happening is that what I found is that self-sabotage is just self-protection, right? This trait, which I named the inborn sabotaging trait, doesn't undermine you. It actually protects you from the very success that you're seeking, because that success on a subconscious level is more painful to achieve and sustain. So we go back doing the same thing over and over again because it's just more painful on a subconscious level, not really seeing it consciously. So when you release your personal professional power and you hit that wall, the saboteur, which we call the inborn sabotaging trait, kicks in to protect you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not an idiot or all the other 100 words we say to ourselves. You're just in protection. And imagine as you hit that wall, as you start to contract, imagine there's only one trait that is doing that. And once you understand that you can actually shift it and now go into immediate growth. And now you're doing this compared to doing that in that contractive state.
Hold on a second. You said something a minute ago. I gotta get to. You said the self-sabotage is we're protecting ourselves from the success we actually seek.
Absolutely.
So are you saying that we are afraid of success? We don't really want it, or what?
We want it, but based on this trait, we feel that it's more pain to get to that point. Okay? Because it's just, for instance, you may be a person that's scattered all over the place and you don't finish things on time, right? You may be a person that overly gives and you are focusing on everybody else's feelings, not your own, right? And people take advantage of you. You may be a person that doesn't express themselves as much. You don't want to feel stupid or embarrassed. So in those situations, if you're scattered all over the place, to be actually on target and consistently actually complete something is more painful, because then what happens, right? That person needs that chaos to get things moving, or they'll be complacent. The person who actually, if they actually took for themselves, would feel selfish, that, that's not the way it is. I'll be feeling this selfish person. Not that they're self-nourishing. They're actually, it's okay to self-nourish yourself, but they see it as a selfishness, so they always have to give to other people. And that person that expresses, by actually expressing that they can't really talk or verbally get their point across quick enough so they don't want to feel stupid. So it's more painful to be stupid or feel embarrassed, so they don't say anything. So
Okay, that makes
those
sense.
are kind of the examples.
That makes total sense. That means, stupid. People are afraid of embarrassed when they, sometimes no one's watching anyway. Give me an example of that. Tell me a story from one of your clients, or you can use me if you want to, because we've worked together. But give me a story of somebody who actually had that self-sabotaging trait and what you did to get them to go, oh.
Well, one of that's really close to my heart is working with veterans, that business owners who are veterans that we've worked with guys that are from 5 to 12 tours. And that PTSD, those 4 letters kind of trigger things. And we've had people understand that this trait is the true reason behind their PTSD, because the PTSD is just a protection. That's all it is. And once they understand what to do and how to shift it through what we call the T-now method, they now are able to engage more. They're going out more. They're dealing with situations. They're not going and having episodes. We had one gentleman who had a brain injury, and he would have these episodes that would affect his wife, his kid, his business. And within the first week, by using it, he was able to offset those episodes and got more in control, and was really blown away how quickly it was working. And he has now created a great thing with his business, as well as a much better relationship with his wife and his children.
Okay. Can we go a little deep in that? I'd like to know, obviously don't mention names here. I want to know what was going on. I want to talk about the pain of that gentleman first, and what he was going through, some of the discussions you might have had before we get to the resolution. Can we tell me more about the challenges he was facing?
So one of his trait was that he was always giving too many people. He would focus on everybody else except himself. Because of the brain injury, he wouldn't be able to hold his memory as much and other things, and he couldn't really keep that control over his schedule and everything else like that. But he would consistently give to other people. And then when people would not show up, or they wouldn't do what they told them they would do, he would get this really into an anger situation. What we call his superpower would come in and just attack and start screaming, because he was in that mode. But once he understood how to value himself, how to take for himself and not focus on everybody else, but find that balance between giving and taking, he was able to kind of calm his communication, not get upset so quickly, and knew the reason why he was really upset with them is because that's how he set it up on a subconscious level. He allowed them to take advantage of him because he overly gave and gave them all his time, because he didn't value his time as much. Then as he started to value his time and everything else and his family, because he was putting his family on the back burner, and realized that they both had to come together. And by focusing on that saboteur and the T-now method, it was able to shift it. And then as he would have possibly an episode, he would recognize it, and it was able to thwart it faster than he ever did before.
Okay, we got some questions coming in here. What have you found to be the most common self-sabotaging trait amongst everyone you've worked with?
I get that often, and I haven't put any research behind it, because it depends on people coming in. I believe in just what people need at that moment.
Sure.
In my opinion, I believe all 3 are probably a third of each one, because I don't think one would be more. But if a business owner, I would see more people on the scatteredness, and then all of a sudden I would see more people in that other trait and another trait. So it kind of I don't have any really strong proof behind it on that. It's just over the thousands of people I looked at, it's pretty spread evenly.
Okay, that makes sense. It's evenly. All right, so I want to get into a little more details on these. You've broken out into 3 main areas, and I'd love to hear a specific story about each one. So we covered the PTSD gentleman.
The one that overly gives, right? So you said it's okay to take you on, right? So when you first came to me,
Yeah.
The other trait was that you weren't really clear on what you needed to be. You kind of were scattered. You didn't really follow through on certain things because you just didn't know what to do, or you tried certain things that didn't work.
Right.
And then you kind of be going back and forth with being scattered and trying to get things and then getting so hyper focused on something that you would forget about everything else.
Right.
And then as we were really focusing on what you were doing, and the more clear you got, because that was the subconscious words that you were using, right? How to become aware of what was happening, to follow through, to acknowledge at that moment you wanted to do something more fun than actually doing what
Shiny
you
object
wanted
syndrome
to.
comes to play here. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and then as I did it, you doubled your business in a couple of months because you realized the things that you were not doing, you needed to delegate, or looked at it in a different way and was able to get it done, and then things started to happen for you pretty quickly.
Yeah. I'll expand on that since it's about me. I can do that. But yeah, when I first met Phil, guys, I was doing okay. I had, one virtual assistant. I was doing, publishing a few books a year. And he said, well, we can, what do you want to accomplish here, Doug? And I called him out and said, I want to double my business. He said, okay. And I was like, really? You could do it? He goes, well, you're going to do it, but I'm going to show you what's blocking you to make it happen. And most people say they want to double their business. What's an entrepreneur going to think? 6, 12, 18 months. We did it in less than 2 months because of what he's describing right here. And it's so fascinating when I reflect on myself and look at what you're doing with everything. It's wow. It really is kind of simple in a way, but it does take some thought, effort, and tactical things to make that happen. And I've gone, as you've seen, from one VA to a team of 12 people. And while I still suffer from a little shiny object, what did we do? I put finish the project, Doug. I gave that to the people who can finish the project. So, and I call.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
That's right.
Is that people think, well, how can I get rid of this? You never get rid of it.
Yeah.
It would be stupid if you could, because it's your protective mechanism. It's like saying, I need to get rid of my, with thyroid, right? There's when your thyroid level rises, there's a regulation where it stops and it drops it. So your thyroid level is never like this; they're always fluctuating. Yeah. So what happens is the saboteur brings in adversity in order for you to evolve. I'm going to say that again. Mm-hmm. The saboteur brings in adversity so you can evolve. So when you feel that resistance, when you're out of flow or anything other than everything's going well, get excited because you're ready to evolve.
Yeah.
Don't look at it as a detriment. What people won't realize is that they ask for things, for the universe or God or whatever the case may be, and they get the answer through an experience that was not expected. So they think, oh, I'm getting punished, or see, I should have never asked, or whatever the case may be. But you got to realize the universe doesn't speak English, doesn't speak Japanese, doesn't speak Spanish. It speaks experience. So when you have an experience, whether good, bad, or indifferent, it's trying to explain to you at that moment what you need, that it's coming from you, through you, and for you, not at you.
That is so powerful. We have so many stories. I want to hear, please give us one more, maybe 2 more stories from exact people who you've helped. I love the story about the couple who was about to get divorced. I also love the guy with the 8-figure company. So unless those are the same sabotaging traits, please give us, I think you have 2 other ones we haven't covered here. Give me a great story on one of the ones we haven't covered.
So one of the clients, they were not doing that great, and she was taking the course, and she wasn't really expressing herself as much, and he was overly expressing. He was, he would interrupt her and everything else like that. And over the few weeks, the relationship started to grow, because she started to understand not only her sequence and why she worked, she understood her husband and why he was doing the things he was doing. So she was no longer judging him. She was understanding that he at that moment was protecting himself from her, and she was protecting herself from him.
Yeah.
And they started to blossom great, but he never knew she was taking the course. So we
That's
yeah, we
dramatic
teach,
pause there, guys. That's really powerful. That's
yeah.
really,
So we teach people, imagine knowing your teenager, imagine
yeah.
knowing your partner, imagine knowing your business partner or a potential client. We
Yeah.
teach where, imagine a potential client knowing their sequence and knowing why they're resisting your product and service. And we show you how you can guide them to seeing where the resistance is to your product and service if
Yeah.
the product and service is right for them. This is not manipulation to try to do that because karma's a bitch and it'll come back to you.
Yeah.
But it gives you the ability is that helping them to give them the opportunity to connect with you and
Yeah.
to help them. Because sales is not taking, it's serving, it's to give. That's the original meaning of sell is to give. So you're giving that person the opportunity to work with you to help them through for the reason why they're even talking to you. But your saboteur will actually stop you from closing them because it's more painful to close them than not. And once you understand that, then your closing rates can skyrocket.
Yeah, we've got a couple of athletes on our live streams. You're watching recording, too bad for you, but the live stream, we got an Olympic athlete and an amateur boxer on. So I want to ask the question about health, right? And you're big on health. You helped a bunch of people in that, I know, in your careers, plural. And I'm curious about the reason people have yo-yo diets, why all the gyms are packed on January 2nd, empty on the 3rd. You know, my son would say it's commitment, discipline. But I'm guessing there's different sabotaging traits for each of those people, why they wouldn't complete what they know is so important for them. We're given one body and we treat it like garbage sometimes. So give us a story, Phil, about one person and whatever trait they were, about what they were doing and sabotaging themselves health-wise, if you got it, and then how you redirected them or showed them their antidote.
Well, just to let you know, I used to be a board-certified chiropractic sports physician. I was a doctor for the United States powerlifting team to other different sporting events. And so I saw this a lot in my practice and wish I had this way back when. But dealing with my clients who are athletes or even weekend athletes, right? But I remember a client where she was actually not a client, she was a patient, and she was crying and she was, I'm a failure, and she was diabetic and I feel tired and I just can't stop eating certain things and a whole list of things that she was going through. And I'm known as a smart ass at times, but I was doing this in a loving way.
That's why we get along so well.
That's why. And I told her, I said, looked her dead in the eye, I said, you're not a failure. You're very successful. She says, what are you talking about? I said, you're a very successful diabetic. You're very successful at being tired and eating improper things and everything else.
Wow.
You're very successful. So let's just shift that around so that you can do the opposite. And the reason why you're doing this is because your saboteur is trying to protect you. In this state, you are protecting yourself that if you actually lose weight and get healthier, it's more painful for some reason. And what was really interesting, and it was like in the beginning of working with this type of situation, the person had confided to me that she was raped she was molested at 5 and raped at 17. And during the process of understanding this, I basically told her that, do you understand that if you get to your perfect weight and you see yourself more beautiful and all that, you have a more potential of getting raped. That's what your body's telling you.
Wow.
So you need to stay in this state in order for you not to have that pain. And that's the protection. That something subconsciously is more painful, that if I do become successful, what is it? So that we went, she went to, we were giving her the antidote to her therapist, because, I'm not a psychologist, therapist that's in that area. But what was happening is when we were using that antidote to that, she was starting to see what was really going on and how to shift it. Because one of the things I found being a functional medicine practitioner, especially with autoimmune disease, I would have people come up to me and, they'll come into the office and say, and how are you feeling? Oh, I feel horrible. You're going to kill me. I'm like, what'd you do? So I had pizza. I said, yeah, and? I said, how many days of pain you been in? You're like, 4. I said, I'm glad you had the pizza. This is fantastic. I want that to reinforce what the pizza does. But I'm more curious, what was the trigger that happened before eating the pizza that was more painful to deal with than knowing that 4 days of pain were going to ensue. And what I found was that trigger, they used their saboteur in order to then use their numbing agents, whether it was eating, drinking, sex, overworking, or whatever the case may be, which would then cause flare-ups and inflammation in the body. When we found out that trigger and then used the T-Now method, two things happened. They lessened their numbing agents, or they stopped them. So therefore, the flare-ups weren't as bad, and they were able to heal more effectively. And that's why I had very high success rates in those clients, because we were able to get down to the one thing that was the true cause of this. So the inborn sabotaging trait, and I'll boldly tell you this, is one reason is why we always self-sabotage, why we never get to success. 100% guaranteed, it never fails to show it, and the T-Now method helps shift it instantly.
That is so cool. So I want to wrap up with like the hardest case you had to work. I call it a case. The hardest one you had to work on was you've identified the self-sabotaging trait. You gave them the antidote, but it was a real challenge to get them to actually take the medicine. Can you give us a story, exposition about that type of person and what happened and how you're able to get them to take their antidote?
One of the things, it's a great question. I never had this question. One of the things that comes to mind was a gentleman, he was in a particular industry, and so much was going on. And I get many people that'll come in and they're like, well, that's another course I got to do. I got so much going on, I'll wait. And I said, you need it now to understand why you've created this chaos over and over and over again.
Yep.
So that when you understand this, you can lessen the chaos as time goes on, right? So we started with this gentleman, and he was doing well in the beginning. He was going through some major lawsuit, and he was always in this anxiety state, because anxiety is just protection. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And usually it's their superpower that's tripping them up. So during that process, he was the guy scattered all over the place, but it took, and that was back then when I was doing really one-on-ones with people.
Yes.
It took about a year to really help him to hone in on this, because he has such that aspect of it. But also there was a chemical imbalance as well. So you got to realize, one of the things what people like to work with me, because not only am I looking at that business consulting and the coaching end of it, I'm also the doctor that looks at inflammation and why. So certain things that he was eating was causing an inflammatory reaction, so he couldn't think properly. He had a dopamine deficiency, and trying to figure out how to deal. He was in another state. And back then I didn't, I got rid of my licenses, so I couldn't practice, but I was relying on other docs to help them.
Right.
So it took a while, but he also had a drug addiction that we did not know. I mean, I couldn't know. Even dealing with other people that was around him, they kind of thought, and that was where it was really hard to help them. But their business increased tremendously. They brought people around in order to help them, but it was just because of that drug situation and being so far away. But he knew, and the therapist knew, that this was what it was. It just took some time because it was such ingrained that he felt that if he didn't have these drugs, he couldn't survive. And so I would think that was probably, even though we had success, it was really difficult and strenuous in that.
So
and I don't want people to think it, don't try, but there are ways to offset this now that, I mean, this was about 5 years ago. Now what I would know through different things too to help, because since then I've discovered more things that can get even more specific to him.
Terrific. All right, we're going to wrap up with one question, then I'll obviously give people some ideas how to contact you. Last question from a couple people here is, forget the slow version. What's the fast version? How can you shift yourself instantly? Maybe not permanently, but how can you actually recognize that pattern and do one thing to rapidly move into the antidote?
It's through our programs. It's
Very good.
we
Yeah.
help people within the first week to understand their inborn sabotaging trait, to get the antidote. And I've seen people shift within an hour and a half by just understanding what this one
Yeah.
thing was.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, I can't explain it in this
That's
being.
totally fine. Listen, we're,
Yeah,
it's
that's why we
important.
just have we try to figure out who is a good candidate for our program. We don't sell
Right.
people. We just have a conversation. And if it's for them, great. If not, I usually try to talk people out of it because sometimes we just want to make sure people are 100% committed to themselves and don't get
Yeah.
frustrated with it.
Yep. I was on a Zoom call with some people the other day, and they're talking about influence and impact and whatnot. And I said, my job is not to pour coffee into your brain. If your brain is a thermos, my only job is to unscrew the lid so I can put the coffee in. So the person not open to improvement or impacting their health, wealth, or relationships, I got nothing for you, right? So
Well, especially those who are coaches or anybody else, you have to have deal breakers for your clients.
right.
That if I have 4, 5 different deal breakers. If they don't have even just one of them, then they're not a fit. And
Yeah.
until they are, then
Right.
we'll be open to it. If not, then we tell them thank you, but
Yep.
this is not for you at this time.
I love it. Well, shameless plug time. Let's find out how we can get a hold of you, how we can improve our lives, our health, wealth, relationships. Dr. Phil, it's all yours. How can we get a hold of you?
So we have a way to do so. You can go to tnowmasterclass.com. That's tnowmasterclass.com. You'll go to a 12-minute video. It tells you more about the T Now method. And then you'll able to do a discovery call with me personally. It'll be me. And we have a 30-minute discussion, what's going on. It's confidential. No one will even know that you actually even called me. That's how I shoot like a doctor-patient relationship. And we have a discussion to determine if this is something for you. If we feel it is, then we go to another hour consult. We go even deeper to determine if this is truly for you and what can I guarantee you. I will actually guarantee you results.
And this was the thing that blew me away. I'm sorry we're ending on this, but it's important. Maybe put it at the beginning as well. There are thousands, tens of thousands of consultants, coaches, people that want to help you out there. You're the only one that I've ever met who's like, it's up to you, but I also guarantee. How can you guarantee results when someone's got to do the work? To me, is mind blowing. If you want to know more about this, don't listen to me. Go and chat with Dr. Phil Agrios. He's got an amazing program that can help you with pretty much whatever's blocking you. So thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank
we'll
you
see you
so much,
next time.
Doug. I appreciate it, man.
You bet.